Morning, guys. I am Katie, the Education Director here at Carolina Tiger Rescue. And again today behind the camera we've got Marissa.
Good morning.
Our volunteer coordinator. And we are here with 2 of our 16 tigers. This is Roscoe. He'll come back in a second. And Camilla's laying down over there. These are 2 of our more shy tigers and ones that we don't get to see often on or ever on the tour path. And that is because Roscoe has a bit of a personality quirk in that he sometimes forgets he's a big bag tiger and he gets a little nervous about things. So he lives far away from the tour path. He loves the quiet life, and then he lives with Camilla, and although she would do fine on the tour path, the 2 of them get along so well that we certainly do not want to separate them. So I do have some treats today. Disregard the treat sign. I got permission from Keeper LA that said that they can have treats this morning, so I've got some chicken for them. And we're just going to spend a little time. Sorry, trying to adjust my mask. At some point we'll get used to these. Talking about these 2, and then just some general information on tigers. And of course we've got an activity for you on our website once this is done. So Roscoe and Camilla, do you want to head over there maybe because she's hanging out? So this is Camilla.
Hi, pretty girl.
Oh, of course he's laying down now.
Of course he is.
This is Camilla. So Roscoe and Camilla came to us from Ohio. They were a part of the same rescue as, here comes Roscoe, as our 2 lions, Roman and Raina, who we met last Wednesday. So they came from Ohio after Ohio changed its laws, saying that they could no longer, or it was going to require a lot more permits and a lot more care for the facility that had them to keep them. So a quick backstory on these guys. They were rescued by a woman who started her own rescue called Rescue One. So there's a lot of rescues in this story. This woman was at one point she was a real estate agent. She one day was asked by a friend, hey, I'm going to go to this wild animal auction. Do you want to go? And she said, oh, yeah, I've never been to one. Sure, I want to check this out. She managed to come home with a cougar cub. And on the way home, she's calling all her friends, just saying, uh-oh, now I have this cougar cub. What am I going to do? And one of her friends rightfully said, you should take that back. And she decided, you know what, I can give it a better home than anybody else. The problem is, of course, that cougar cub was a wild animal. She definitely wanted to do right by these animals, but got in a little over her head within a year. She had moved out to the country, bought all this land, and then, bless you, and then was rescuing these animals. And what was different between her rescuing and our rescuing was she was at times purchasing these animals from breeders and from circuses, and while she wanted to give them a lifelong home, what she was doing was actually also paying those people for these animals, so they were getting money for them, which is part of the problem and a reason why we do not exchange money for these animals or pay for these animals. 2011, there was an incident in Zanesville, Ohio, where a man had 56 wild animals, over 18 tigers in his backyard, lions, cougars, bears. He also had leopards and macaques. And one afternoon in October of 2011, he cut the cages of those animals and he let them all loose. Well, as you can imagine, that posed quite a problem. Local authorities were getting calls on animals on the side of the road, lions in people's backyards, wolves in the middle of the road. And unfortunately, of those 56 animals, 49 got out that day, and those 49 were euthanized to make sure that, one, they were able to grab everybody that had gotten out, but also to make sure the public was safe. Ohio then said, this made national news in 2011, and Ohio said, oh, we can't let that happen again. Ohio at that time was one of the states where there were no significant laws on owning these animals. And they said, again, we can't let this happen again. So they enacted strict laws very quickly. And the woman who had the rescue one couldn't keep up with those laws. She was also running out of money. It's very, very expensive to feed our animals and care for our animals. And so she worked with another organization, IFA, or International
Fund for Animal Welfare.
Thank you. International Fund for Animal Welfare. Any other time that would roll right off the tongue. International Fund for Animal Welfare. To rehome all of her animals, and we rescued 6 of them. We rescued Roscoe and Camilla, our 2 lions, Roman and Raina, and then 2 cougars, Jericho and Nakobe. And then Jericho and Nakobe unfortunately have since passed away, but we've got the 4 left, and they have enjoyed their life here, where we know that they will be fed for the rest of their lives, given all the medical care they need, and this is their final home. They are going to be 11 years old this year. Right? That's math. Math is hard. 11 years old this year. In June. We don't know their exact birthday. So I'm pretty sure their birthday is the day that they were rescued. So it's kind of like your gotcha day. Very rarely within our rescues do we know the actual day they were born. So if we don't have that information or don't have any information giving us a day that they were born or an approximate day, we will use their gotcha day, or the day that they came to Carolina Tiger Rescue. So they will turn 11 in June. We actually have a pretty good idea that Camilla is older than Roscoe, because we did discover a picture of them as cubs, and she is significantly bigger. She's probably at least a year older than him. Doesn't matter to us, but it was just a fun fact. We found that picture and we were like, yeah, she's a lot bigger than him when they were cubs. So she's likely going to be 12 this year. We're going to say that they're 11. Again, they can't count. It doesn't matter. We wish them a happy birthday on their birthday, of course. Roscoe is one of our, if we want to head back over, I think he laid down.
He did.
He is our 2nd largest tiger. So Capriccio is our biggest at 489 pounds. Roscoe comes in at about 410 pounds. He's a big boy. Yes. And again, Roscoe prefers the quiet life away from the sanctuary. He gets a little anxious when there's a lot of stuff going on. And even as we got out of the car this morning, after we drove down here, he kind of looked at us a little unsure. And then we spoke his name. He recognized our voices. It's a little hard to recognize us behind the masks right now. Recognized our voices, and he settled down very quickly. So he's just more of an anxious tiger. Just like you've met some of our other animals, they have all very different personalities. We have no reason to know why he's anxious, except he is. Just like some people are more anxious than others.
I forgot the name. I'm so sorry. I'm going to scroll back. I think it was Sarah. Yes, Sarah, age 10. Oh, Roscoe. Big yawn. Sarah, age 10, Katie, would like to know why they're on no treats.
Great question, Sarah. They're on no treats because...
It's fine. I'm just tripping over things. I apologize, guys.
They are on no treats because LA, one of our keepers, she actually does operant training with Roscoe. And so while we're able to give treats today, I asked if that was okay. But they are ones, and the fact that there's 2 of them that live together. So when we have volunteers and adoptive parents who come to visit, these 2 are ones that can't get treats. Because what we don't want is for Roscoe to get confused as to what that treat is for. Is it because I am being asked to do something, or do I just get it? But again, very limited times like today, LA said, oh, it's totally fine for him to get a treat. So, and the other fact of that the 2 live together. So if we can get Camilla back over here. Hey, Camilla. All right, Roscoe might get all the treats.
Yeah, she says no.
It's also really, it takes a lot of practice to be able to give 2 tigers treats at the same time so that there's no fighting. They are food aggressive, so we want to make sure they're not fighting over that resource. And luckily, Camilla typically knows that this guy's going to throw his weight around and just waits her turn for her treat. But that is because they have practiced. Hey, Camilla! Do you know what cats do? Whatever they want.
So speaking of throwing their weight around, Katie, while you grab those treats, someone wants to know how we lift Roscoe.
How do we lift him? We don't. So if Roscoe needed to, so let me answer this in a couple ways. First one is, we have a scale to find out what his weight is. We have a scale that actually is 2 bars that go in. It's actually made for cattle. And you're so patient. You're the most patient tiger or animal we've given treats to. And it has a piece of plywood. So we shift them out. We put the bars in through the fence. You want a treat?
Someone says try shaking the treat bag. It always works for their cats.
Right? Camilla! Whatever you want. So then we let them back in. They walk on the scale, and then we're able to get a pretty accurate weight on them. If we needed to sedate him for any reason and move him, that is how we would move him. We had talked about it a little bit during our vet stuff last week, that we have a large cloth. We call it a litter.
It's like a sling.
Stretcher.
Yeah.
A large cloth stretcher that has handles on it, so that if we needed to move Roscoe, say, up to quarantine for any reason, we, while he was sedated, would roll him into that. For him, it would take at least 4 people on each side to lift him, and it's a very slow process. Our vet would, of course, be here with us to ensure that he stays asleep. We certainly wouldn't want them to wake up during that. The entire sanctuary is closed down. We put him on the back of a trailer, drive them up to quarantine or wherever we need to take them, and do it that way. Now,
she's coming back up behind you, just a heads up.
If we are able to, we will actually put them in transport crates, which we'll cover at some point, and they do that while they're awake. Ideally...
Oh, she was coming up on that side.
Ideally, we would move them while they're awake. It's just a lot less dangerous in terms of their health to do it while they're awake, and we get them put up in transport crates, and then we put that on the back of a trailer and move them that way. Would you like a treat? Maybe. Other questions?
Yes, there is a question of why is he walking back and forth when he was just laying calmly before?
I have food and he's super excited. Kind of like when the ice cream truck comes around my complex and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. He's just super excited to have the food. It's kind of like your dog at home. Hey Camilla, would you like a treat? Kind of like your dog at home who gets really excited. Maybe if you're going to throw the ball or give him a treat as well. It's just energy, and he's super, super excited about it. Want a treat? Come on. So we'll give him his. Come over and give him hers. So patient.
Good job, guys. What are they eating this morning, Katie?
They've got chicken. So I just cut up 2 thighs into smaller pieces. I certainly could give them the whole thigh at one time, but then that would be done very quickly. So you cut it up sometimes to make it last a little longer. It does have the bone and all. They will eat today. They didn't eat yesterday. Yesterday was a fasting day. If you guys remember when we talked about feeding, we don't feed every day. Our big guys eat 5 days a week. Tuesday is always a fasting day, and that's because they're not going to eat every day in the wild. And so he's especially excited for his treats this morning because he's hungry. Although if you ask him, he's always hungry. Roscoe eats about 2 chickens worth, which is about 12 pounds of food. 5 days a week. And he is super funny. His personality is very different than everybody else's, except maybe Madonna's. He takes forever to eat his food. We can typically feed 4 other tigers while he's chomping down on his food. But We let him take his time. It definitely doesn't matter to us how long he takes, as long as he's eating. It gives us a good idea of if there's anything wrong, if he's chewing on one side or the other. We've definitely discovered some tooth issues with other tigers if we notice that they're only chomping down on that bone on one side versus the other. But so far, he's a big, healthy, content tiger, I would say.
So Katie,
He's doing beautiful this morning.
He is. He's doing fantastic. We have a question of when all of this has passed, can people come out and visit? And if they can, do we offer close encounters?
Good question. So once this is all passed, we will and are excited to open back up for our educational tours. The only way to see our animals is through one of our educational tours, our guided tours. They're either with a trained tour guide or a staff member. We limit those to only 25 people on each tour because we don't want to stress the animals out. We also limit the days of week that we do it because we want to give the animals a break. So that they're more likely to come up to the fence so you can see them a little closer. Roscoe and Camilla, again, are not on tour. These are not two animals that you would see along the tour path. But if you've tuned into our other ones, you'll see animals like Elvis, who we read with yesterday, Raja, and the trio of tigers that live up top. As far as close encounters, we are a federally accredited wildcat sanctuary and the only one in North Carolina. We are also the only one in North Carolina that is accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, or GFAS, which means we do not allow any contact with our animals to the public. And to push that even further, we do not have contact with them. As content as he looks right here, he is a wild and dangerous animal. He would have no problems hurting anybody who shared the same space with him. Even though he's been around humans his entire life, he is wild and he is dangerous. Carolina Tiger Rescue is very much against having close encounters with these animals, putting their hands on these animals. It is not safe for the humans, and it is not safe for the animals as well. So we are very, very, very much against that. Many of our animals have actually come from those type of facilities that allow you to pet cubs or anything like that. They come with a whole host of health issues because of it. Many of them don't actually make it out of those facilities. They're taken from their mothers right after they're born, deprived of food, deprived of the necessities to grow big and happy and healthy. And so we are very, very, very much against that, and are working towards a day when those places no longer exist. All right, Roscoe?
Someone said, you mentioned that Roscoe and Camilla are not on tour. What determines if an animal lives on tour?
That is a great question. So once we are within, once our animals get into quarantine, so anytime we rescue an animal, they always go into quarantine first. So our latest rescue was Mama Serval. Mama came from a state where it's illegal to have them. The family that had her for the last 6 months was trying to find her a good home, and finally were able to, or heard about us and stumbled upon us, and we were able to go get her. So once in quarantine, that gives us about 30 days or more, depending on the animal, to get a physical, determine if there's any health issues, get a baseline on their health. But it also gives us a good idea of what their personality may be like. So Mama, for example, almost the entire time in quarantine, if somebody came in to feed her, to clean, or anything like that, she'd sit back in the corner and hiss and spit. And that gives us a pretty good indication, at least at this point, she's not going to be an animal that is going to enjoy being on the tour path and seeing large groups of people. You take an animal like Roscoe here, what we saw with him, I wasn't here during his rescue, but were similar things. He wasn't necessarily coming up to the fence, although he does now because there's smaller groups. We actually did try him on the tour path at one point, and he would hide in the back and just got really, really anxious, so we moved him away from the tour path. If you take our animals, our trio of tigers, Capriccio, India, and Carolina, while they were in quarantine, Capriccio was actually a big scaredy cat, but he would still come up to the fence. He would chuffle. The girls chuffled a lot and didn't have Didn't show any signs of fear of humans or anything new or anything like that. So we decided, you know what, let's give them a chance on the tour path and see how they do. And they've actually done beautifully. Sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we get it wrong. If we are noticing that that is not a safe and healthy place for them to be mentally, then we're going to move them. We also have some animals on the tour path, away from the tour path, who would do just fine along the tour path, but they have, there's just not always room on the tour path for them. So like Mila and Riley tigers, they come up and shuffle and enjoy the attention that the humans bring and that kind of thing. But there's no path along enclosure along the tour path for them at this time. So it's really up to their personalities and what we see. Sometimes they, like Tasha, did not do well. She was a little like Roscoe, very fearful when she first came and had some anxiety about being around large groups of people and new experiences. She has now transitioned to the tour path and shuffles at everything, and is doing beautifully. So it changes over time. It also can go the other way. If we are seeing stress from an animal along the tour path, we'll move them off the tour path, and then they do fine. So it can kind of go back and forth. But it is a lot of us getting to know their personalities, which takes some time, but also reading their signs. Roscoe is completely content to hang out with us. If there's a large group of people, he would be back in the back of his enclosure, and we would not be able to see him. So,
I've got 2 questions for you, Katie. One is, do they ever catch the birds? Which is funny because I don't actually see really any vultures right now, which is very strange. I may have jinxed us. But yes, do they ever catch any of the vultures? And second, why is there a shift gate behind you?
Oh, good question.
Very observant. Like it.
So the first question to answer, yes. So when Roscoe first came to Carolina Tiger Rescue, he was known as the master vulture killer. And catcher. He killed over, I think, 45 vultures within the first 2 years that he was here. He now just sees them as an annoyance and will occasionally chase them off. I think too, the vultures have probably deemed this enclosure not safe, and stay a little further away from this enclosure versus T.O. Tiger, who doesn't typically chase them off, and they know they can get up scraps from him. So the vultures are intelligent in some capacities and know which animals to hang around and which ones to not hang around. So they will catch them. They will occasionally kill them. Very rarely will they eat them. These guys are well fed. Also, not a lot of meat on those vulture bones. More of an annoyance than anything. As far as a shift gate, that seems like a funny place for a shift gate, to the outside. So if you notice, it does have a lock on it. So this shift gate is for when we need to move, put a crate up there, and there's actually a crate behind you, Marissa.
Yep, hold please. It's over there.
So that crate over at Tasha's old enclosure was there when we needed to move her. So what we do is we put that crate up against this outdoor shift gate, we ratchet it to the fence, and then if we needed to move Roscoe to another enclosure, that is how we would do it without sedating him. So ideally, he would walk into that crate. With him, it would probably take some work with LA to desensitize him to the crate, and then to learn to get into the crate and that everything's okay. Camilla, I feel like, would probably just walk right into it. So that is how we safely move them with a crate from one enclosure to another, or up to quarantine, or when we first get them and they're in quarantine, we get them in the crate and then we move them to their enclosure that they're going to live in. So otherwise, this gate stays locked. It is a special key. Nobody but the keepers have keys to those locks, or to locks of big cats, level 4 animals. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in this morning. And hanging out with Roscoe and Camilla. They did beautifully. We were a little apprehensive as to how he would do this morning again, because he's a little sensitive, which is totally fine. We love him dearly for it. He is a handsome tiger though, and we were so excited that he came up and you guys could meet him. This is really the only way that the majority of the people get to meet him. We do have our donate button on our Facebook Live. If you are able to donate, we greatly appreciate it. Like much of the country at this point, we are closed down to the public. That is how we make about 30% of our revenue to feed these guys and house these guys. We're doing okay, but any bit counts, of course, and helps. Your activity today. So one thing I wanted to point out, and of course they're not going to sit next to each other, is these guys, even though they're tigers and they are orange and they have stripes, they look very, very different. And as we've talked about before, stripes are unique to each tiger as your fingerprints are unique to you. And so your activity today is an art project involving shaving cream, and you get to make your own tiger. So if you send us a picture, you'll be entered to win a Picasso from one of our guys. And tomorrow's Thursday, and we're actually going to go out with Keeper LA and talk about medications and how we give medications, why we give medications, and how we get our big guys to actually take the medications. So tune in tomorrow. We hope you have a great, cold, rainy day here in North Carolina or Central North Carolina, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.